Over the next several weeks, the American International Podcast will be exploring some of the films that AIP presented exclusively in their television packages as part of their American International Television Division. Many of these films were imported from foreign markets, others were made specifically to be included as part of their television packages, and a few were picked up from other domestic distributors following their theatrical runs. In this series, we will be looking at films that are associated with the AIP as a result of being presented in these television packages.
We're not talking about actors. We mean a real monster.
I brought her back. She'll live and I'll get her another body.
I know they're going to catch me, but don't let anyone see me like that. Please, Doctor, help me!
Biologically speaking, it's of primary importance that man should want to mate. Hey, that's...
You don't get all your kicks from surfing, do you?
We want to be free to ride our machines without being hassled by the man. And we want to get loaded.
You think you're going to make a slave of the world? I'll see you in hell first.
The American International Podcast.
Are you ready?
Thank you for joining us as we continue our look at the best of American International television on the American International Podcast. I'm Jeff Markin.
I'm Cheryl Lightfoot.
And today, our discussion is on It's Alive from 1969.
I almost laughed when you said best. It's Alive was directed by Larry Buchanan, written by Larry Buchanan, from the story being by Richard Matheson, and as we'll explain later, John Tomerlin may have contributed to the script. It was produced by Ross Lynch and Edwin Tobolowsky.
It's Alive stars Tommy Kirk as Wayne Thomas, Shirley Bonne as Lesland Stearns, Bill Thurman as Greevy, Annabelle MacAdams as Bella, and Corveth Ousterhouse as Norman Stearns.
It's Alive begins with a Larry Buchanan monologue in a monotone over some dash cam footage of a couple driving through the Ozarks. It begins to rain, and then we hear the wipers squeaking. We will hear that for a long time. And the voiceover says, "There's a legend in these hills that when it rains and the sun shines at the same time, the devil is kissing his wife. And speaking of the devil, look, Norman," says the narrator. An exclamation of something out of time, out of place, then a simple request to explore another in the strange oddities that dot the roadside of 1,000 highways, oddities that beckon the traveler to stop and see. But terror knows no time or place, and jeopardy can hide behind gentle rain or shine. And if Norman Stearns had known what danger lay, screened by an Ozark forest, he never would have left the highway.
The oddities that the narration is referring to is a dinosaur at the side of the road. And the car pulls off the highway. The windshield wipers are still squeaking as the car drives past these dinosaurs.
And then the credits roll.
It turns out they're not actual dinosaurs. Why are you laughing?
The first of many disappointments in this movie.
They have scaffolding on them, so they appear to be a work in progress.
Or possibly a decrepit old statue that needs to be repaired. After driving for absolutely hours through this back road, Norman announces that they're out of gas, that they could have at least have been in Los Angeles by now. From the Ozarks? He's trying to make his wife feel bad, but he's the one driving through the backwoods on an empty tank.
Yeah, I think he wanted to see the dinosaurs.
He's a boy.
He stops the car near where a Jeep is parked, and there's a cooler/beverage dispenser in the back of this Jeep, so Norman just walks over and helps himself to a drink. The Jeep's owner appears and asks if he could be of service. Norman stops, and the owner, who we will learn is Wayne Thomas, says to go ahead and have a drink. It's hot out.
He tells Norman to go ahead and drink his ill-gotten beverage. Norman asks Wayne where the road goes, and Wayne says as far as he knows, it goes nowhere. Norman gripes that the map told him it went to Wilson National Park, and Wayne reckons that Norman turned about 10 miles too soon if he wants to go there. Norman's wife Lesland gets out of the car to join her husband, who crabs at her, "Fine, we're lost. I hope you're satisfied."
Wayne introduces himself to Lesland and again asks if he could help in any way. Norman asks Wayne if he might have any gas he can spare. Wayne doesn't, but he says there's a farmhouse up there down the road that might be able to help them. And would Lesland like a drink?
Norman, cordially for him, thanks Wayne and goes to leave. Wayne kindly asks if they're going to be able to make it there, and Norman says that, yeah, they're going to make it.
At the farmhouse, we meet Greevy. He runs a roadside attraction with a mini zoo. His snake, Clara, has escaped her cage, so he scoops her up and places her back into it.
Apparently it had been left open. There are several other caged critters alongside Clara. Norman pulls up in front of his gothic southern mansion/plantation house and starts honking his horn like he's at an old-fashioned filling station. Kind of rude.
Greevy goes up to the car and Norman immediately asks him for gas. Greevy says the truck was supposed to bring some, but it's running late. Norman asks if he's sure there's nothing he can spare, and Greevy tells him that the truck could be along any moment, and they're welcome to come inside where it's cooler and wait. Norman says they might as well. Greevy asks where they're from, and Norman says New York, and once again blames his wife for their predicament.
He says, "My wife is fond of traveling by car, unhurried excursions through the scenic byways," in the bitterest tone possible. Lesland meekly says that they were going to Wilson Park and they took a wrong turn. Greevy says folks do that sometimes, and they end up here. Uh-oh.
Norman asks if they could telephone to confirm that the truck is coming, and Greevy motions for them to get out of the car. As Norman and Lesland follow Greevy inside, Greevy asks if anyone might be missing them. But Norman stupidly confesses that they don't know anyone out this way. Greevy then lets them know that he doesn't have a phone, but not to worry because they'll like it here.
Inside, there's a woman. She's peeping at the threesome from the curtains. For some reason, she looks very distressed, and she leaves this room just as Greevy invites them to enter his parlor, spider to the fly style. He tells them to make themselves comfortable. He's going to go find his housekeeper to make them some tea. He goes off bellowing for Bella, who is never around when he needs her.
Now, to me, this is the first sign that something is amiss because a farmhouse like this usually wouldn't employ a housekeeper.
How do you know?
Does he look like the kind of guy who would have a housekeeper?
He looks like the kind of guy who wouldn't do a single chore on his own, yeah.
Greevy goes off to find Bella, leaving Norman and Lesland alone. Lesland has a feeling that something's not right. Did he see his eyes? But Norman poo-poos that. He believes they're only majorly inconvenienced, but not in any trouble. But he does bring up that if they'd flown to the Bahamas like he'd wanted to, they wouldn't be in this predicament.
Yeah, Norman and Lesland are obviously dressed more for air travel than for driving to parks in the sweaty forests of the Ozark. She's wearing a nice dress and he's wearing a suit and tie. Then Lesland waxes rhapsodic about getting to see the real America. She's lived her whole life in New York City, you can tell by her southern accent, and she wants to see the towns and the villages and the people who live there. She tells Norman, "I don't suppose you understand." Obviously, he doesn't.
Meanwhile, Greevy has finally found Bella. She's closed herself in a room, and he accuses her of hiding, and she says that she saw those people come in, and she knows what he's going to do, and don't make her help him. He slaps her and tells her she will cooperate, and to get those people something to drink, and to keep her mouth shut. He's going to move their car. He looks out the window and sees that Wayne Thomas has pulled up. He warns Bella that if those people get scared and run off, that she will take their place.
He shoves her one more time in the direction of the kitchen, and then goes out to deal with the intruder. Wayne gets out of his Jeep and notices the car with New York plates. Greevy trots out and Wayne asks if they made it. Greevy is kind of confused. He asks Wayne if he knows those people. Wayne says no, but he met them and he knew they needed some gas. Wayne asks if there's something wrong with the car, and Greevy lies and says it won't start. Wayne goes over to the front of it and pops the hood to take a look at it. He asks Greevy to get a screwdriver out of the front seat of his Jeep. Greevy goes to the Jeep, and he sees two tools lying there, a screwdriver and a wrench, and he chooses the wrench. He goes back to Wayne, who's leaning down over the car's engine, and bonks him on the head with the wrench. Wayne goes down, and Greevy puts the hood down and starts dragging Wayne's body off.
Inside the house, Bella has brought some iced tea for Norman and Lesland. Norman tells her to put the tray on the table and sneers at her to open the drapes. Bella starts to do so, but she notices Greevy dragging off Wayne's unconscious body. "I can't open the drapes. Mr. Greevy doesn't like them open," she says. Norman says that Mr. Greevy will have to make an exception and pulls the blinds. Bella shouts in protest, but it's okay. By now the coast is clear.
Bella asks Norman and Lesland why they came here. And Norman snaps at her asking, "What's the matter with you?" Bella slinks off, defeated and frightened, without saying anything. Lesland demands that they leave now, just as Greevy enters. He asks if everything is all right. Norman asks if the gas is there yet, and Greevy says no. Lesland says they can't stay, and Greevy asks, "Where would you go?"
Lesland mentions the young man they met back up the road, and Greevy tells them that he was there, and that he's headed off to town to bring some gasoline for them. During the conversation, Norman has his eyes closed, obviously fighting off the migraine that the sound of his wife's voice gives him.
Lesland looks distressed that Wayne is gone and says that they'll just go wait in the car for him. Greevy says that if they're going outside, he can show them his collection. Lesland understandably does not like the sound of this, but Norman sadistically accepts on her behalf. After all, she said she wanted to see some wildlife. Did she? I don't remember her saying that. Greevy shows him his pathetic collection of caged wildlife: a bobcat, a coyote, a snake, a lizard, some monkeys. Norman asks if it isn't unwise to live so far away from everyone. What if he needs help? Greevy gives him a look like, help? Why would somebody need help? But Norman suggests that perhaps he might get bitten. Greevy says that he's built up a resistance to their poison. Bobcat poison?
Monkey poison.
Coyote poison. He says the animals like him because they know he feeds them. I'm not sure that's a true liking.
Then Greevy offers to show them the pride of his collection, and Norman and Lesland follow him off-road down a stairwell into a cave.
Lesland is going against her will. Norman practically has to shove her. They ask if it's going to take a long time, and Greevy says it'll be over before they know it.
It gets darker as they enter deeper into the cave, and Norman asks if there's a light they can turn on, and surprisingly, there is.
Greeley flips a switch, and they find themselves in a furnished part of the cave. There are 2 beds, a chair, a table. Norman says it looks like somebody lives there. Duh, it's going to be them. Greevy offers to go turn the rest of the lights on in the cave, and Lesland says that it's time to go home now, but Norman refuses.
There's a sound of a crash, and Norman and Lesland look up to see that Greevy has closed the gate, and they are now caged.
The gate that we didn't even know existed until now. Lesland screams, "Norman!" as if it's his fault, and it kind of is.
Greevy laughs maniacally as Norman demands Greevy open the door and offers whatever he wants, and Greevy just leaves, still laughing. Norman says the man is insane, and Lesland tried to say, "I told you so," but Norman won't even give her that. He never should have listened to her in the first place. He should be in the Bahamas right now.
Instead, he listened to her and her fool notions to drive across the country like poverty-stricken gypsies, slamming her and the poor and the Romany people with one sentence. He gripes about the motels and truck stop garbage food they've had to eat. But Lesland's not thinking about that. She's looking around and making some deductions. She concludes that this cage wasn't built just for them. There must have been others. She asks Norman what might have happened to them, but Norman doesn't know.
Lesland screams as something starts pulling itself from a hole in the ground. It's Wayne.
Inside the house, Greevy is eating while Bella just pouts at him. Greevy calls her wasteful for not eating and explains the circle of life to her. Bella asks how he can do what he does to other human beings. There have been others before her and after too, I guess. Greevy says that he has to defend himself, and anyway, he spared her, didn't he? Bella blurts out that sometimes she wishes he hadn't, and then is shocked at her own audacity. She bleats that she didn't mean it. Greevy says that she annoys him and orders her to go into the kitchen and make the prisoners some food.
He tells her to prepare 3 plates, just in case the other one is still alive. In the cave, Lesland is tending to Wayne's head wound. She asks how long he's been down here. Where's here, he asks. He says he was looking at their car, and then he heard voices and crawled up to where they were coming from. Norman sees the tunnel from which Wayne emerged goes straight down. Lesland shushes him. Someone's coming.
It's Bella. She's coming up from that tunnel. Norman grabs her and asks, where does the tunnel lead? She says it goes to the basement of the house, the door to which is locked. Norman demands that she take them to Greevy and threatens her with jail, too. She's just as responsible for what happens to them as he is. Lesland pushes him out of the way and asks to take over the questioning. She kindly asks Bella's name, and she asks if Bella can help them. Bella says that she'd love to help them, really, but if she does, Greevy's going to give her, Bella, to it. And she's horrified at the thought. Lesland asks if Bella could at least leave the lantern behind, and then she pries it out of her hands, and Bella leaves.
Then the 3 of them try to decipher what little they were able to get out of her.
Lesland and Wayne discuss this scary it, but Norman says it's rubbish. Bella is in on it, a plan to bleed them of everything they've got. Wayne says that they won't get much out of him. He's only an assistant professor of paleontology. Norman says that Wayne wasn't the target. He just stumbled into the trap set for them, the literal tourist trap.
Wayne takes the lantern and starts down the tunnel. He wants to see what's down there. The tunnel has a stairwell, so all 3 of them head down. As they get towards the bottom, they hear the sound of running water.
Then Wayne spots a stairway leading down to a mysteriously lit and foggy, bubbling red pool, and he wants to see it. Lesland cautions him to be careful, and Norman snarks, by all means, we'd hate to lose you.
But just then, Greevy pops up out of nowhere with a gun in his hand and tells them that losing Wayne is just what is going to happen if he goes down there. He says that Wayne had once told him that he was a
paleontologist?
Yeah, study of things that were old.
But aren't old anymore?
Greevy says, just wait until you see my thing. Wayne asks if he does have a thing, why not exhibit it with the other animals?
Greevy says, it's great and powerful, my greatest discovery.
People will come from all over the world to see his thing.
You're saying it like it's so dirty.
Norman agrees. Greevy would just need some advertising.
He'll pay for it.
Greevy tells them to shut up. He knows they're making fun of him. He tells Miss Stearns that she's pretty, and he might be convinced to take her out of there. Lesland declines, but Norman tries to persuade her to take Greevy up on his offer. Having her on the outside might be their only means of escape.
Yeah, he doesn't care what happens to her when she's out there, obviously. Wayne tells him to share his discovery, and they'll help him do that. Greevy snarls, help me? Why don't you help yourself? And then he shoots Wayne. Wayne curses him and hurls his lantern at Greevy, knocking the gun out of his hand. Norman wants to go find the gun, and Greevy says, go ahead, it won't help you. And then he cackles as he leaves.
Now Wayne has fresh wounds for Lesland to tend to. Well, Norman derides her for not taking Greevy up on his offer. Lesland says she never realized what her value was to him before today, and it isn't enough. Norman slaps her and says that sounded rather final. She says it was meant to be. Then Norman says, I see. I think I'll take a look below. And he heads down the stairwell toward the bubbling water to find the gun.
Once he's down there, he calls Wayne down with obvious ill intent. Lesland and Wayne stay up where they are, though, because something is happening. They see, before Norman does, a man in a cheap rubber monster suit hop out of the pool behind Norman. Norman spins around and his bug eyes bug out even further. He shoots at it, but it doesn't stop. Lesland screams as the monster closes in on Norman. There's no kill shot, just many extreme close-ups, but you get the idea.
Wayne can't believe what he's just seen. There's been nothing like this for millions of years.
It's impossible.
At the farmhouse, Bella stops playing the organ to listen to the deafening silence.
Lesland and Wayne are still where they were before, but now she's really snuggled into him. I guess since she's a widow now, she needs a new love in her life. But Wayne can only think about this creature that he saw. So far he's only seen fossils and the drawings of it, but he thinks it's a Mosasaurus, a water creature, the most successful of its time. Normally they grow 30 to 40 feet tall. And perhaps that's what we were meant to think about this one too, but it was really hard to tell. She asks what they're going to do, and he says they should go back up to that room where the beds are.
You make it sound so dirty. Bella has been lurking around, and she's been listening to this conversation. She goes back to the house, and Greevy grabs her. He wants to know where she's been. He can't get much out of her besides begging and pleading, but he knows that she's been down there, even though she's never liked what was down there. Maybe she's starting to change? At any rate, he'd like a report, since she was down there. How are they? Are any of them still alive?
Bella tells Greevy that Norman seems to have been killed by the thing. Up in the cave bedroom, Lesland and Wayne are enjoying some coffee and waiting for Bella to return with bandages for Wayne. But it's Greevy that arrives. Greevy is pleased that Wayne finally believes him. Wayne says that any scientist would give their life to make that discovery and wants to know how Greevy managed it. Greevy says that since Wayne is about to give his life, he'll tell him. He was on the property looking for gold when he dug into a cavern and found the creature. He befriended it by giving it sheep, cows, and coyotes. Then one day a stranger came looking for what he had, and he found it, or it found him. This gave Greevy the idea to keep feeding it people, but only those that no one would miss.
That would make it his friend. And once again, we notice that Bella is around and eavesdropping on this conversation.
Lesland calls him inhuman, and Greevy reminds her that she could have accepted his offer, and he'll get rid of Bella if that's her objection.
Lesland once again declines, and Greevy tells her to think about it. She has a few more days to make up her mind. As Greevy leaves, Wayne asks him to try to think about this like a scientist. Doesn't he realize what this discovery could mean for mankind? But Greevy just laughs. What does he care about mankind?
I'm surprised that Wayne could compare him to a scientist, to be honest.
Wayne tells Lesland not to be discouraged because he's counting on her to keep his spirits up.
Now Bella shows up with the bandages. She's made up her mind to help them. Then Wayne sits her down, and Lesland asks her how she found herself in this predicament. And boy, is this a long story.
2 years ago, Bella was a school teacher nearing the end of a school break when she found herself driving after a long day, looking for an inexpensive place to stay.
Because school teachers don't have any money. They can't afford fancy hotels or credit cards.
She drives until she no longer can because the road is closed. So after changing her hairstyle, she finds herself at the farmhouse of Mr. Greevy, who seems hospitable. He offers her a room in which to spend the night, and she makes herself at home.
Once up there, she seems uneasy, but she undresses herself for bed. We see Greevy outside the room, going up and down the staircase, extremely angry, mad even. Bella climbs into bed, and that night she sleeps fitfully. Eventually she wakes up. She goes to the door and tries it. It's locked. She goes to the window, and it's barred. She's trapped, and she starts crying.
She goes on to say that she was deprived of food and water and sleep because the animals are so loud at night for 3 days. So she just sits in a rocking chair all day staring at the wall.
Eventually she begs him for food, and he says he'll bring her something. While she's begging and pleading for help, Greevy tells her that the motive for him kidnapping her is that this is his way of protesting the new highway. It took traffic away from his serpetorium, so now he's mad at any tourist that happened to stray past him. I guess he should be grateful that anybody's coming his way, but instead he's taking all his frustrations on them. He does agree to bring her some food, and relieved, she collapses on her bed and finally sleeps. He sneaks into her room and puts a tray that's covered with a napkin on her table. He looks at her with a really strange but happy expression on his face, and he sneaks back out. Eventually she wakes up, and she's happy to see that there's a tray of something on her table, but she removes the napkin, and on the plate is a single dead mouse. There's an angry trombone sound as Bella screams and tears her hair out.
She explains that Greevy's behavior only became more cruel as everything he did tried to outdo the last. We see him sneaking into her room while she's sleeping and blowing a whistle in her ear. And she realizes that she has to escape. So she devises a plan.
She needs to stay awake so that she can be ready for him when he does come back. And she takes a bottle of hydrogen peroxide from her bag. I guess she's a bleached blonde. Haha. She feigns sleep, and when he next approaches her, sweaty and determined, she throws that hydrogen peroxide in his face. He's momentarily blinded, and she makes a run for it. Eventually, he recovers. He goes to chase after her. He falls down the stairs, but gets back up and runs out the house after her.
Now he's chasing her through the woods. He eventually catches up to her, removes his belt, and beats her. She lost the will to live and became one of his animals.
Flashback over, and just by the way, that took about 20 minutes. Wayne tries to get Bella to give him her key, but no, she doesn't have one for the cage, and she can't give him the one to the house. Wayne asks where his Jeep is, and Bella tells him it's in some shed. He asks Bella to bring him the blue canvas bag from the Jeep. To avoid suspicion, she's going to bring it with their next meal, and Bella agrees to that and leaves.
Lesland inquires to Wayne what might be in that bag, and he tells her that it's dynamite caps, and he thinks there might just be enough to blow out the door. So back in the house, Bella's getting a meal ready to take down to them. She tells Greevy that they didn't eat much of their breakfast, so she's bringing this down to them early. That's very thoughtful, says Greevy. And what were you doing outside before? Bella explains that Wayne needed some bandages, so she brought him some. Greevy looks down at the tray that she's prepared and says that she forgot the napkins, so Bella goes off to get some. And while she's gone, Greevy sprinkles a white powder into the coffee.
Don't think that's sugar.
Bella brings the tray down to Wayne and Lesland, and Wayne is happy to see it. She's brought his bag as well.
Wayne tells Bella to meet them at the car in 30 minutes. Bella agrees and leaves, but unfortunately, Lesland is serving the coffee. Lesland is seriously flirting with Wayne. In the middle of laughing, Lesland starts to get seriously groggy. She puts her head down on the table and she's out. Wayne realizes too late that the coffee is drugged, but he manages to toss the dynamite under the bed as he collapses onto it.
Then Greevy comes down and drags the unconscious Lesland off down the tunnel, and Bella goes to Wayne and wakes him up. I guess it's been 30 minutes and he hadn't returned to the car. She explains that Greevy took Lesland. Wayne is very groggy, but has enough sense to grab the dynamite.
They follow after Greevy, who really isn't moving that fast. Greevy sets Lesland down on some rocks and ties her feet together so she can't run away and hurt herself. He tells her not to be frightened, and once again offers her an out. She could be with him. She says no, and he puts his hand on her mouth to gag her, and she bites him. And he has a tantrum. He shouts, "Soon it will be too late to choose me." The creature is watching this whole time.
Wayne and Bella are coming down the stairwell. Lesland calls out to Wayne, and Greevy picks up the gun that had been dropped by Norman upon his demise. Greevy tells them to go back or he'll kill them. Wayne kicks the gun out of Greevy's hand and rushes to take Lesland to safety.
Greevy goes down when he's kicked and is laying on a rock. Wayne unties Lesland and walks away with her. But Bella doesn't join them. She picks up the dynamite. Greevy pulls a gun and asks what she's holding. Bella says it's dynamite to destroy his creature and him with it. He says he won't let her, but she lights it and throws it, I guess, to where he and the monster are. Greevy shoots Bella and she goes down. The monster approaches Greevy, neighing at him like a horse.
Greevy reminds the creature that they're supposed to be friends, but the creature only whinnies in reply. Then the dynamite blows. There's some smoke and some rocks fall.
I put finally the TNT blows, silencing them both forever.
And that seems to be the extent of the damage from this.
Well, they couldn't blow up the real cave, so they just faked it. Outside, Lesland says that they'll have to tell someone. Wayne says they'll come and they'll dig, but they won't find anything. Wayne says everything's gone. It all went. Everything went when the dynamite went. There's nothing left. Nothing. Maybe there never really was anything. You understand? Maybe there was never anything. Well, if so, why do we have to watch this movie?
And so the two of them head off, agreeing that this story can't be told, so Lesland will have to come up with another excuse to explain her missing husband.
They didn't actually say that, but I'm sure that's what happened.
And back down in the cave, the water still bubbles. So is this the end?
Question mark? Well, for us, it is the end.
You are listening to the American International Podcast, where we are discussing It's Alive from 1969.
In 1963, John Tomerlin was reportedly adapting the Richard Matheson story Being for American International Pictures. The production during this period went by several titles, including G.O.O., Goo, The film was reportedly originally written for Peter Lorre and would have also starred Elsa Lanchester. Lorre was scheduled to star in both the 1964 version of the movie and a subsequent AIP TV series. Lorre's death early in 1964 could have been the end of the project, but that script was sent to Buchanan to use for this movie. It's not known how much of the original script made it into It's Alive, and how much was rewritten by Buchanan, but only he and Matheson received writing credits in IMDb. There are no writers credited in the film's credits.
The cave scenes were filmed in Onyx Cave in Eureka Springs, Arkansas in 6 days. According to a story in the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, Onyx Cave might have a special allure for sci-fi fans as the filming location for some scenes of It's Alive, Larry Buchanan's 1969 film.
Buchanan said about the film, "One day we did 57 setups. We didn't see 1 foot of film until the whole batch came from the lab a week later. 9 days later, we had cut, scored, and printed the film and delivered it to AIP, who made a 5 o'clock deadline for a package to one of their stations. It was frantic. It was a different way of making movies."
Tommy Kirk had previously made Mars Needs Women for Buchanan. The actor later called the film a monster movie so cheap that the monster wore a scuba suit and had ping pong balls for eyes. It was in fact even cheaper. They reused a monster suit from an earlier movie, The Creature of Destruction, so for this film, no monster even had to be made.
According to the article, The Cinema of Tommy Kirk by Stephen Vagg, published in Diabolique magazine, quote, "By the mid-60s, Kirk had developed a serious drug problem which was badly affecting his life. It didn't help that in a period in his career when he needed to take stock, do some theater, say, or hold out and audition for a supporting role in a really good movie, he kept taking gigs as leading men in low-budget pictures. By the time of It's Alive, Kirk was looking physically unwell on screen."
Buchanan said Tommy was a really fine actor, but he just disappeared into the woodwork. He had a lot of emotional problems and needed to talk things out. And the problem of being the director and an Aquarius, I didn't get much sleep having to listen to those stories. After putting in a 10-hour day, he'd want to go and have a few beers until 2 in the morning. We'd talk about Europe, traveling, philosophy, what he wanted to do with his life. He is a very cultured person and a very proud person, so he probably took as much as he could before dropping out.
Corveth Ousterhouse, who played Norman, was a pseudonym for Corveth Ousterhouse, an Oklahoma theater director who was working at the Dallas Theater Center at the time the film was shot. He agreed to do the movie because he thought it would be a lark. Hopefully it was for him.
And It's Alive is the last of the notorious Azalea pictures ever produced.
It's Alive premiered on October 30th, 1969 as part of AITV's Young Adult Theater Package, first made available to stations in 1968. The package included a wide assortment of films, including It's a Bikini World, The Amazing Dr. G, The Vampires, and Kenya, Country of Treasure.
The Vampires, of course, is the television title of Goliath and the Vampires. A TV Guide review called It's Alive nonsensical sci-fi. A non-contemporary review in DVD Talk gave it a little more credit, saying the film features endless footage of a couple driving, and that if you disregard the kill scenes, the laughable rubber monster suit, the clunky photography, the plotting pace, and apple padding, It's Alive really isn't that bad, adding that the cast does a decent job with what they're given.
The Scream Factory said the film was, quote, "a poor Larry Buchanan thriller that might have been watchable had the producers spent some money on it, but admitted it boasts a good performance by local favorite Anne MacAdams, who played Bella, but was credited as Annabelle Wienick in the film, and she is also featured in Creature of Destruction."
Portions of the It's Alive script were reused and or spoofed in an absurdist comedy called Deary, Off the Wall in 2019.
In that movie, there's a character called Wayne Thomas who runs around saying, "I'm a paleontologist."
I don't know what you thought, but I thought there was really some good stuff in here. There were parts of the story that drew me in, whether I wanted to be drawn in or not.
I will say that before I even watched this movie, I read about it in a book that basically detailed the whole plot. And it sounded slimy and disgusting, and I was not looking forward to watching it. The first time we watched it, I did see the slimy and disgusting parts, but the second time we watched it, where we got a little more into the story and paid a little more attention, I would have to agree with you. It's not as bad as I initially dreaded, and it's not as bad as it was to me on the first watch.
Well, you're right. It's not even a gritty film. This is a grimy film.
It's very sweaty, and it seems like everyone was hot.
Every character looks like they would have their own distinct odor, and none of it pleasant.
They all needed a shower, not together, just individually. There was way too much padding. The flashback scene with Bella was far too long.
Yeah, speaking of absurdist comedy, that's almost an absurdist comedy to stick that whole sequence in here. That's a third of the film.
Midway through, it's almost over, but we have to stop and learn her backstory. It probably could have been summed up in a couple of sentences. She stumbled on there by mistake. He imprisoned her, he tortured her, and now she's his housekeeper.
But this movie's still only, 73 minutes or something? So
it's 80 minutes. They all had to be 80 minutes. Well,
so it was necessary to make it long enough to fulfill the AIP contract.
But that scene where he's chasing her goes on so long, and they're both kind of ambling through the woods before they finally confront each other, and he beats her with his belt. But before that, it's almost like dreamlike sequence where she's slowly running and he's kind of trudging after her. And it takes so long. It's unforgivably padded.
Well, the whole sequence takes long. I mean, she's a prisoner in this room and you're watching her rock in a chair and stare at the wall. And it's not too long, but it's more than long enough to get the point across.
Right, right.
And that kind of reminded me of, I don't know if I've mentioned this before, and you'll probably kick me for wanting to mention this now, but it seems like this might be inspired by the French New Wave that was still going on in 1969.
Maybe. I can't reach you to kick you, but I mean, you might have a point.
Well, what comes to mind is there's a scene in Tout va bien by Jean-Luc Godard where the camera is attached to a shopping cart and goes back and forth. And this goes on for, I don't know how long it is. It feels like 10 minutes where nothing is happening except people are checking out their groceries. And that is the only film that I've ever walked out of.
Well, there is a scene at the end of The 400 Blows where Antoine Doinel escapes his juvenile detention center and he just runs. And we see him running and running and running. And then he finally gets to the beach and he looks at the camera and that's the end. And that's one of my favorite scenes in any movie. It's just so arresting. He's found his freedom, but he's also hemmed in by the water. And you could say that the chase scene maybe was inspired by that or something like that.
Well, I think the point that maybe Buchanan was trying to make here was to watch something that is so boring that you feel trapped.
Where you feel as trapped as the characters.
Yeah, and like that shopping cart sequence I mentioned, that is painful after a while. So you make your audience feel pain being trapped in the reality.
And trapped in the theater. Well, you weren't, you left. Well, I definitely got a lot of that. I mean, I felt the heat coming out of the cave. I felt the claustrophobic sense of everything was hemmed in. I think it helped that they filmed it in an actual cave in Onyx Caves in Arkansas. And it wasn't some cheesy made up set that we only saw portions of. I mean, we got the feeling that they were sunk under the earth because they were. We got the feeling that they were hemmed in there because they were. And so that part felt almost cinema verite.
And I don't think there's any characters that are even cartoonish in this. You might say Norman is because he's so
bitter.
Bitter, yeah. When he asks Bella to open the drapes, he asks her, but he says, would you open the drapes? It's not a question. He's telling her to do it.
Right. And when he comes to the house, he honks his horn like whoever lives here needs to attend to me immediately.
Yeah, so we don't exactly miss him when he's killed.
Oh, I cheered. But we're not meant to like him. And it's supposed to, I guess, lead us to finding sympathy for a woman who immediately moves on from her terrible husband to this new nice guy. And I thought Tommy Kirk was much better here than he was in Mars Needs Women. He was more likable. I didn't like the character in Mars Needs Women that he played. He showed a little more emotion than he did as the Martian guy.
Well, I don't think the Martian was supposed to have emotion, so that was
right.
part of the point until the end when he cries and
falls in love with Yvonne Craig. Who can blame him? But I enjoyed Tommy Kirk a lot more in this movie, and I liked his character. He's obviously supposed to be the hero of the picture.
He's a pretty easygoing paleontologist.
Well, he gets really upset at the end that the dinosaur that was about to kill him got blown up, but he's all about the science. I like the women in this movie, too. I thought that maybe Bella was a little too histrionic, but it's easy to understand after she's been imprisoned by this madman for 2 years. And we're never told what else he does to her, but you could probably imagine the worst. He wanted to replace her with Lesland. Obviously, she wasn't into it, but it seems like there may have been a sexual torture story that they weren't telling as well. Maybe there wasn't, but
I think that was more than implied.
Right. I'm hoping that she didn't have to go through that. But she was so defeated that I could kind of see that he really broke her down in every way possible. And I thought Lesland, who maybe could have been a little more heroic herself, was at least steadfast in refusing him. Maybe it wasn't that if you'd seen his face, sweaty and angry and barking at everyone, I don't know anyone who would have gone with him willingly, even to save themselves.
Well, it might be a slight step up from Norman.
But once he was dead, there was really nothing in it for her. She had Wayne. I guess if she had a weapon and she could maybe stab him during an unguarded moment, then she could have been the hero of the story. But that seems unlikely for someone who had put up with Norman for that many years, she's probably not mentally strong enough to physically fight off a big man like Greevy who wants to do her ill.
I don't know how I feel about her suddenly latching on to Wayne right after her husband dies. Obviously, it wasn't a happy marriage.
No.
But she's more than forward with him. She's cuddled him. She's snuggled into him. She's got her hand on his shirt and she's fiddling with his button as she's talking to him.
Yeah, when we saw that, I'm like, oh, they're dating now?
And he's just going, I can't believe I just saw a Mesosaurus.
Yeah, he's in science mode. She's in replace my mate mode. So perhaps, yeah, she did move on pretty fast. However, I think it's one of those situations where you're trapped together, like in Speed, where they say desperate situations bring you closer together, but it's an artificial thing. So it might have been just her clinging on to someone who could possibly save her.
Well, I think she was more than clinging there, but...
Well, yeah. Maybe she just wanted to give somebody affection after 20 years or however long she was married to that jerk.
So now you're ready to rate It's Alive using our AIP scale, where A is awesome, I is intermediate, and P is pathetic?
Well, I can't exactly give it an awesome, and I initially would have given it a pathetic upon first view. But watching it again and thinking about it more, I'm going to hit the middle with an I. I have been doing that with Larry Buchanan films for the most part. I did give Zontar a P because it was just terrible. Everything else I've rated from him has gotten an I, and I think I'm just going to stay in that ballpark. I don't know if he's a good director or not because these are the only movies I've seen. I know he doesn't have a lot of money to work with, and that's a big point against any of his movies turning out good. I don't know if he deserves entirely the blame for this, but there are just some significant problems with this movie. I really can't do better than an I. What about you?
Well, of the 4 movies that we watched so far from him in this series, I think this one is probably the best.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I agree.
I think it's really the first time we've actually seen Larry Buchanan get to do what he wants to do, or as close as he can do with the little bit of money he has. There was some of that in Mars Needs Women, obviously, because the first time he was doing an original script in the Azalea Pictures canon. But this just seemed to have more of a distinct mark to it. What
also helped was not seeing the same cast of characters that we'd seen in the previous 3 Larry Buchanan movies. These are totally new actors that we're not used to. We don't have the Tony Houston, the Warren Hammock, those actors that we've seen in every Larry Buchanan movie till now. So it's almost like a new cast of characters.
We have seen Tommy Kirk before in Mars Needs Women, obviously. And Bill Thurman had appeared in all 3 of the movies we previously watched, but in smaller roles.
There's no elderly detective / doctor / newspaper printer.
So nope, he didn't make the cut in this one.
I did miss him.
George Edgley. But I think that one of the things that helps this movie a lot is that there's a monster in the movie. It's a threat. It's an obstacle, but it's not the main story, despite probably being the It's Alive thing that they're referring to in the title.
It's merely the weapon used by the bad guy, by Greevy.
And that helps because it's rarely seen in the film and it's really ridiculous looking.
It's a scuba suit with ping pong and ball eyes.
Kermit the Frog eyes. And so that means that really what carries this movie is probably the dialogue. It's interesting to watch Norman be so degrading to everybody. You don't like him at all, but you kind of want to watch to see what's going to come out of his mouth next. So sorry to say that he might be the most interesting character in this.
Probably, yeah.
So we were watching a couple of scenes this morning before recording to refresh our memories, and I was getting sucked into the story again. I thought I better turn this off. We got to record. So obviously this is not an A film, but it's going to be another I. This is intermediate.
I wonder if we ever will see an A Larry Buchanan movie.
That's hard to say because I'm very discriminate with my A's. If you'll look through my history, most of these are going to be I's. I'm very discriminate with both my A's and my P's.
I mean, most films are average. That's how averages work.
So I think that wraps up our discussion on It's Alive. This has been the American International Podcast. I'm Jeff Markin.
And I'm Cheryl Lightfoot.
And until next time, stay tuned. Follow the American International Podcast on Instagram and Letterboxd at AIP_pod and on Facebook at facebook.com/American International Podcast.
The American International Podcast is produced and edited by Jeff Markin.
A man whose mind is distorted by hatred.
And Cheryl Lightfoot.
A girl hungry for too many things.
The American International Podcast is part of the Pop Culture Entertainment Network.